Issue 117. To start out, we see Snively and Eggman looking human again, running on an information superhighway trying to avoid missing the ride, because missing the ride is something that can happen for some reason, with Eggman saying that he doesn't like being in cyberspace, even though he loves technology. Ever since their robot bodies were destroyed, they're nothing more than disembodied electronic programs trying to hitch a ride back to the real world. Wait, is the explanation for them surviving the explanation that they were able to send their minds to cyberspace before it could happen? I guess that makes sense. If Eggman can do it with the press of a button. Eggman says that Snively hasn't been properly prepared yet, making him a sitting duck for the software's antivirus programs. Fortunately for Snively, that doesn't happen for some reason, and he comes back in a new metal body, looks sad briefly at Eggman not making it back to them, and then immediately gives himself a new paint job to be an android instead of a robot. Of course, Eggman shows up and denies Snively his new look because he knows that nobody cares how handsome or not handsome he is, and unnecessarily breaks the fourth wall, reminding him that Eggman's the main villain and not him, when knowing that you're the villain is kind of psychologically impossible. The main story then begins, and we start out with some bunny Mobian narrating that he hates traveling the rocky and dry Forbidden Zone, and can't believe he'll finally be seeing someone named Tommy again after all those years. Then he wonders if he didn't want any visitors because it was so hard to find the place, and to his surprise, he runs into Drago, Lightning Lynx, Flying Frog, Predator Hawks, Sergeant Simeon, and Sleuth Doggy Trader, who try to kick him out even though he was invited by some giant tortoise Mobian who was friends with them. The criminals all burst out laughing at the idea that a supposed geek would have friends, as if the idea that two geeks could get together as friends is ridiculous. And after the tortoise nervously asks with wishful thinking if the criminals are his friends, well, I wonder why he's here with them at all when he looks like a good guy, it's revealed that this guy is Tommy Turtle. Oh, I've heard things about this character. Bad things. At the very least, he comes off as really likable to me right away. After it's explained that the two became friends after a race ripping off the tortoise and the hare story, which earned the hare's respect from the turtle winning, Drago yells at the turtle because their meeting is just under 2 hours from now, and the hare says that he'll stay out of their way. After Drago implies that he'd actually resort to cannibalism and eat the hare if he annoys them, which came out of nowhere and was totally unnecessary, Sleuth Doggy acts like his old friendly self again before they inexplicably derail this character to be a traitor by offering the hare an extra room to stay in when he doesn't have to. The hare's name is Juice, by the way, because I guess his parents wanted to give their kid a special snowflake name that makes me wonder if he got beaten up in school for it. Sleuth tells him that he'll have to catch up on old times with the turtle tomorrow morning because he needs his help now, and reminds him that he's the top dog. The hare, who knows that the turtle's not used to this and is suspicious, takes off his disguise, revealing himself to be a character I actually care about, Sonic the Hedgehog, who briefly looks like a drunk hillbilly with a buck tooth in one panel. By the way, I guess Sonic can do a perfect imitation of Juice the Hare's voice too, or just disguise his voice really well. Then it's explained in recaps that when Sally got Tommy's radio transmission for help, they were in shock that he was alive after all those years. Tommy had been a childhood friend of theirs that Sally liked, while Sonic disrespected him as a geek like he did with Antoine. Why though? It's not like he's a big fan of superhero comic books and stuff, at least I don't assume so. It's explained that it was actually Sonic who lost the race to him during a nap, meaning Tommy knew Sonic was in the disguise and there really was no hare. After that race, which Sonic for some reason didn't get all annoyed at the turtle for claiming he won it when Sonic was sleeping through it and thus the victory didn't count, it turns out Robotnik took over the city the very next day, before they could try to be friends. Sonic removes an air vent while thinking that he should have waited until Sally got the Freedom Fighters together, but he couldn't wait. I don't think he's really going to need them anyways. That second wait is pretended, by the way. Then it's explained that Sonic not only bullied Tommy like with Antoine, but unlike with Antoine, he actually acknowledges that he did it. It's hard to believe that someone who was literally an elementary school bully as a kid would end up being such a hero. Then it's explained that it's because of him growing to respect Tommy for being too stubborn to not lose the race, that he always took care of those weaker than him instead of picking on them. Okay, that makes sense, except he kept picking on Antoine for quite a while anyways. Then his narration explains while he's crawling in the air duct that Tommy made him realize what true friendship was, and not Sally or Rotor or Tails. What is this guy, self-insert OC? I think that's maybe why people hate this unnecessary character. In the air duct, Sonic's shocked that he sees Eggman and Snively in android bodies looking like they're in the flesh again, Eggman says to Drago that he sees in his data files that Robotnik made a deal with Drago for a factory he used to own, and dismisses the audacity of it. No. Drago's deal was that he'd become a duke. It has nothing to do with a factory. Maybe Eggman's lying, but since he dismisses it anyways, it's just confusing if he lies. Surprisingly, despite this, Eggman accepts the deal with him anyways without even needing to hear his terms. These criminals are all really naive to trust Eggman to keep his word, and even Drago says that he's not such a bad guy after all. And oh yeah, I forgot that Eggman can roboticize people by touch now. So he roboticized Drago into his loyal robot by tricking him into shaking his hand. That explains why he agreed so easily. Well, to be fair, Drago was willing to work for him anyway, so this is a pretty proper fate for him. Then Eggman pulls the Dr. Octopus and sends moving tentacles to grab a bunch of the other criminals and roboticize them too. Sleuth then says that he's going to give him his greatest wish as a deal, saying that all he has to do is roboticize this turtle he's holding and see what happens. Somehow, Sleuth knew that the hair was actually Sonic in disguise and did this on purpose to trick Sonic into jumping in to save the day. At least it's explained that Sleuth knew they grew up together. But how? Tommy explains that he's sorry and he thought these criminals were his friends for some reason. What a naive idiot. I'm so glad he gets killed off later because I haven't heard good things about this guy's inclusion. Fortunately, Sonic's super speed lets him escape from Eggman, and he grinds on the back of Tommy's shell saying that he always wanted to do this as a kid, and yet somehow didn't even though he was bullying him. Right as Eggman hits Sleuth with a roboticizing tentacle, Sleuth throws a grenade at him, but it's obvious that Eggman and Snively are just gonna get their minds in new bodies once again, despite being exploded. Tommy throws Sonic out the window to save him, but unfortunately I have a feeling he's still alive somehow and is gonna muscle his way into Sonic's group of friends. Or maybe I'm remembered wrong, I don't know. He's a good person, but he has no personality, other than supposedly being a geek with no clarification on what that's supposed to mean for him, and being ridiculously naive. The next story has Knuckles and the Chaotix go to Constable Remington, who explains that his people discovered a cab driver left injured near the hospital with Harry in critical condition. Naturally, Knuckles uses his omnipotence to wake him up, but not to heal all his injuries for some weird reason. And also he's somehow able to talk and give him information despite the fact that he has an oxygen mask that would have a tube down his throat. You know, because that's how oxygen mask lung machines work. After he's asked who did this to him, Mammoth Mogul relates to Dimitri that they're not so different in origin, and then insults him that it's a bit late for him to have a guilty conscience and acknowledge how much he's accountable for. Dimitri says that he at least did what he thought was right, while to Mogul, all that matters to him in life is survival. That's a really weird ideology for someone immune to death. To him, survival is something he should take for granted. So why the hell would he bother basing his whole life around something that's guaranteed? Meanwhile, Constable acknowledges that while Harry did tell them Mogul was setting a trap, that was obvious from the start, and Harry doesn't have anything else to tell them. He then shows a bit of genre blindness by saying that maybe his force should lead the counterattack instead, when it should be obvious that his force would just get defeated. Knuckles says no because he wants payback, Harry complains that he was stiffed to the gold that he wanted to be paid, and Knuckles vanishes without his friends, naturally since he's so much more powerful, and doesn't want to put them at risk unnecessarily. A female Dark Legionnaire who saw Knuckles disappear in the camera footage says that in saving Dimitri, the Legion would be in Knuckles' debt. And Leonda says that her brother Kragok would never forgive her if she was to allow that. So she's more loyal to her brother than Dimitri. Well, it does make sense. She acts conflicted about what she should do, and someone says that if Mogul overcomes the Knuckles, he would then pose an even greater threat to the Dark Legion's interests, since he'd prove himself more powerful and be against them. Knuckles shows up to Mammoth Mogul, who says that unless he would submit himself to the Chaos Siphon again, all he has to do is press this button and Dimitri will be disconnected from life support permanently. And Mogul has his finger hovering right over the button, so if Knuckles makes any sudden movements to try to use his omnipotence to stop him, he'll press the button first. So did Mogul steal the Chaos Siphon from the Albions? Aether couldn't have gotten his Chaos Siphon he gave to Tails from the Albions, because if he could get to Albion that easily, then why didn't he just warp his wandering tribe there the minute he met them? But of course, the biggest plot hole is the fact that Knuckles didn't immediately use his omnipotence powers to paralyze Mogul or warp him to prison the minute he showed up here. The first story is written by Carl Bollers, and explains that Eggman and Snively simply survived their bodies being destroyed by sending their minds to cyberspace before it could happen. So the only way to truly kill them would be to do it while they're unconscious and can't do that. Unless they don't need to be conscious for it, in which case that's just not fair. The main story, by Romy Chacon, is about Sonic's mission to save his childhood bully victim Tommy Turtle, completely failing because Tommy decided to throw him out of the building before it would explode from a grenade thrown by Sleuth, because I guess he was way too slow to jump out of the window with him in time. So now I have to wonder what the bullshit explanation is going to be for all of these people surviving this explosion, since unlike Eggman and Snively, they don't have the ability to send their minds to the internet. An internet that I'm not sure where it physically exists on Mobius, because if it's not in Robotropolis, since it wasn't destroyed with it, then why wasn't it found and destroyed to inconvenience Eggman already? Is it hidden underground? Eggman sure thought ahead to put cyberspace in a place underground other than Robotropolis. And the third story has the only significant event being that Knuckles is threatened by a man with Moggle, who says if he doesn't subject himself to the Chaos Siphon, Dimitri will die. This is mainly just a story to lead into a later one. Well, another significant event does happen, as it's finally explained to us out loud the difference between Dimitri and Moggle's moralities. Dimitri legitimately does what he thinks is right, while Moggle for some reason is obsessed with survival of the fittest, even though survival is guaranteed for him. So I don't know why he doesn't just move on to focus on other things. I could understand if he was struggling to survive, but he's not. He's immortal. So that motivation is just stupid. At the very least, it is explained that Dimitri himself isn't luring Knuckles into a trap, since the text blurb does say that he's been kidnapped, and Dimitri doesn't seem to like Moggle very much.